Buongiorno, buonasera, good morning, good afternoon. What? Player, players, skills. It's mostly what we're gonna do today. But my glasses are so dirty. And probably I also want to do some other things if I have time. Things like, for example, we could do tiebreak and set of 4 games just to shorten up. It should be easy. And also the chord change. Chord change. But first, player skills. One of the decisions, let me grab the YouTube chat before we start. Tarapiot, non sapevi che programmavo in Rust. You didn't know that I code in Rust. Yeah. Yes, my last game was actually in Rust. So it's been quite a while actually that is it was my main language. After my last game, I did spend a couple of years writing more Jai than Rust, but you know, it was always there. Right. Player skills. Okay. So the thing that I'm really debating was should I have like a file for every player, or should I have one file with all the players? And so the difference is going to be like, you know, imagine a situation where we have something like a file for a single player. We will have things like graphics or appearance properties. Then we will have things like AI, and then we will have obviously you know, the basic skills. Right. So every file with a player will contain one of these. This is like the default approach. I'm quite hot actually. Hold on. very atypical weather today in Perth. Is atypically humid. So yeah, so the idea is that you can imagine that we would end up in something like, first of all, so if this was like a typical game like the one I do, this stuff will live in content, right? And we will have, we have a folder with player and then players with another GLB inside. It is a mistake, isn't it? My love? You see, we have like players, but then inside we have another folder with players. Like somebody copied it by mistake inside the entire folder. We're using this one, no? I don't see any variation, so I'm gonna delete it, okay? Change on the 12. Yeah, I'm gonna delete it, okay? So if this was my typical game, I will have something here, like you can imagine a situation where I will have like a file called Caterina Bobby with an ID of the player, you know, something like that. 444, right? That will describe this player. And then we will have like a bunch of this. But the idea is to have the player roster to be created procedurally. So first of all, it's not a good idea to live there. So it should live more in the user documents or something like that. So for now, I'm gonna do something hybrid, which instead of having like a lot of these files for every player, yeah, delete for everyone. What we're going to do, we are going to have like something here called something like players DB or something like that, right? Okay, so, and instead of having one player, it's going to have a bunch of players, right? So let's the way it's going to work is going to be like we're going to have like player number 1 with the ID, right? And then we're going to have, you know, name Stefano, Steph, okay? And then we're going to have you know, basic stuff. So model is gonna be this guy. For now, I'm gonna take the GLB off because eventually it's not gonna be GLB. And then the idea is that we're going to have something like graphics, right? And it's gonna have like things like hair color. Right? So hair color, I don't know. Seven. I can also give it in. Let's keep it in floating point. I'm using floating point everywhere. Let's just guess what kind of brownish color would be. It's gonna be more yellowish, whatever. So this is gonna be the graphics for player 1, right? And then it's gonna be skills for player 1. Okay, and we're gonna have like, you know, 4 safe speed, something like this, or power speed, this forehand, slice speed, super slow, right? And then same thing for the backhand. Okay. Slice. Let's have a slightly better backhand slice and slightly slower backhand. Right. So make it very obvious that backhand is weak. Right. Serve, save, speed. Serve, power, speed. And for now we don't have the but let's put it slice or serve, kick, speed. Right, and then it's going to be AI, so the AI characteristic for player one that we have to figure out what they're going to be. So what it tends to do, what it likes to do, things like that. So that makes sense. And then we're going to have the same for player two. Right, so we're going to have player two, this stuff. So player two. Okay. And the player two is going to be Chucks. It's going to have black hair. We can have like skin color or something like that. Skin color. We want to make it very, very obvious. Stefano is very white. Chucks is not that white. Do some player have specialty like a hit between the legs? I don't think so. I have a feeling that that's a little bit. First of all, well, it really depends on where we go with the game. One of the biggest problems when it comes to tennis game that I found is that when you start to put these special shots, the risk is that you end up with a game where rallies look quite ridiculous. Like, for example, games that have things like diving for a shot, they can get very ridiculous, where every match is like every rally is like 3 dives, and so I don't know. I don't know. For now, it is usually not really something that I'm attracted to. If we pivot away from the idea of having a game that is more procedurally based, and we go into a direction where we have a game that is more character based. What does it mean? So procedural based means that we will create a series of base characters that you can swap hairstyle, whatever, clothes and something, right? And so we can create a lot of this variation procedurally. The alternative is to do something more similar to what Genshin Impact, Wuthering Waves, Arknights do, where the character design is you have less characters, but you spend more time on a single character to be very, very, very easy to recognize inside the game. So if we go in this direction, if we go in the direction where we actually model every single character, and you know they're gonna have more of a behavior, then we can maybe target, and maybe they can have like dedicated animations and so on. So we'll see. I already see speedrun playing only dive games. Yeah, exactly, right? It's like, it's too easy to end up in that situation where everything looks ridiculous, right? Xbox, ciao. Okay, so we have this thing, right? So now the next thing to do is to create something that I think we will call players DB, right? And that's probably going to live in our tennis for now. This file is getting big enough to the point that we might end up considering the idea to separate stuff for players who have like a player thing here. So we're going to have this players DB, and the players DB is just going to have a vector of players data, right? But players, and it's going to be a vector of player data, right? And then what we do is players DB, right? And we can new for now, let's have a let's create it from a file name, right? Don't need to really bother too much with things like handling what if the file is not there. For now, I mean, we're here. Let's just do it, right? Where is it? So I remember. What is it? Stud IO result. Yeah. All right. I choose to use Rust. Let's use it. Okay. So we open the ini file. Ini file open file name, right? Okay. And then the way that we're going to do it, we're going to start with an index, right? So we're going to start with index 1, and we're going to loop as long we find players with that ID. We keep going. This might not be the best way to do it. But we really don't care at the moment. Right. So the player section name is gonna be format player underscore index. Right. If we find index, we increase the index. Is it better to use hash map? No, because I'm not going to, how you say, I'm not going to interrogate this thing at runtime very often in a way that I need performance. So it doesn't give me anything. And so here we can do, if we find the section, so ini find any sections iter find let me write let me write a method for this. It's weird that I don't have it. Sections pubfn find section. and we simply return self sections iter find. That's ref. No, it was correct because it was already a. Okay, that's it. So we're just shortcutting on this one. It's more clear. So here we can do find section, player section name. All right. So we find this player, and we can simply create the player data. So yeah, so how is this going to work? For now, you know, we don't have the data in the way we want, so we will have to do a little bit at a time. So eventually what is going to happen is that the player data is going to be player data. So we need to have all this stuff in here. And we already see that there is a problem here, because this has a lot of things that are really related to our player stuff in the game. For example, that visible doesn't make any sense in player data. Visible and index don't make any sense in there. So I think we need to get them out. All right, so let's clear up 1 second this guy. So name is fine. Index and visible, no. So this will have to be, we have to figure out. So let's see here where we're using them. So here we're not using them. Okay, so here we're using, so the player state, okay. So it makes sense that the player, so they make sense in the player. So player, so, ooh, player also has an index, right? Oops, so that was a mistake. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Right. So visible is true, I think. Right. Okay. So here we just put self visible. Yes. Kumiman, I worked on hydrofoil generation. Yes. Oh, by the way, thank you for the raid. Thanks a lot, and welcome to the viewers of Kuviman. And I'm Stefano. Right now, the game is not running. What I'm doing, like Kuviman was saying, I've been working. I worked on hydrofoil generation, which was a game that I released a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, and it was a sailing game about modern foiling boats. And I started about 1 month ago working on my new project, which is a tennis game with anime girls. So drastically different. And obviously, maybe people also know I'm also the developer behind Assetto Corsa, so the entire Assetto Corsa franchise. I was the developer originally for that franchise. So welcome, and ask if you want to know more. Hopefully we can get the game to run sometimes in the next 5 minutes. So we don't have this index and visible anymore. Let's see where we're using index and visible in here. Okay, so player data has no. Okay, okay, and okay. This is the training. We just do this, and that will be okay. What else? We are in. Okay, so we need the index for the player. So the player avatar. So we need an index here. Index. Right. And probably we will just pass it in index. Okay. And here now we need to pass the index in. All right. That sounds all right. Okay, so the game is working. So obviously we started about 1 month ago. So pretty much everything, as you can imagine, is totally temporary. So we have the two kind of mode, training and match. I'll just start a match so you can have an idea. So one of the things I'll let the AI play. So we are experimenting a couple of things. One of the things that we're experimenting is this point of view for the camera, where the camera is attached and stays behind the player, which is a little bit of a difference compared to what you usually find in tennis game, where you get this kind of fixed camera usually. Right, you get a camera like this. Okay. The idea is to get something that feels more like you're playing, feels more like you are in the court. This, from my experiment, works particularly well for things like going to the net, and you know, it feels a little bit like a little bit more like you are in the court, right? This game is definitely not a game. This is not a game where it's going to be Alcaraz against Sinner at Wimbledon, right? It's not that kind of game. Obviously, hopefully you can already notice that the tennis part of it looks like kind of like tennis, right? So the idea is to end up with something that it's tennis is a passion of mine, so I want it to look like tennis. So don't let the anime girls distract you from the fact that at the heart is a tennis game, and it's a tennis game that analyzes a different part of tennis, right? Which is not the famous. I'm playing the famous player on the famous court on TV. That's, you know, and that's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is to look at the part of tennis where you're more like a junior player coming, you know, up in your career to become a pro. So it's going to feature a lot of, the idea is to have a lot of this tennis club situation where you're playing a match and you are in a tennis club, and you know, you don't have people watching your match because you're not Alcaraz, right? You're on your way to get there, and it will be interesting. I think it's totally a possibility that as you progress in the game, I don't discard the possibility that you know, the more you get good, we might start to have like people, you know. So one day I had this idea where we can have like actually like people walking by, right? And the more good you get, you know, we might actually get them to stop and look for a while and watch the match, things like that. And eventually you might get into the kind of the main court of a particular tennis club where there is a tournament. But yeah, but the feel is going to be more like your local club, where you go there and you play your tournament at the beginning. You know, you do your grinding and so on. And another element of the game is going to be the training part, which I just started to do the first ideas the other day, where in this situation what is happening is like, so imagine, so this ball now is coming from nowhere. Imagine that is going to be some kind of a coach there feeding you this ball, and the idea is that basically you have to, you know, put the ball inside those cones, right? So and the idea is that if you don't have a tournament, you get to choose what you want to train. Like, so I want to train my forehand. I want more power on this. I want more spin. I want more precision. Blah blah blah. And then there will be a drill like this, where depending on how well you're doing. So right now, for example, I have a score here as a debug, like 42% of my balls ended up in the actual target. So depending on how good you did in this drill, you will level up your skills. So next time you go to a tournament, your forehand is going to be more powerful or more precise. You're going to have a drop shot, you know, those kind of stuff. What I'm using for rendering, it's a custom engine with Vulkan, just Vulkan bindings for Rust. That's correct. First person, first of all, it doesn't really work well because it's very difficult to tell the distance from the ball. So I tried. I'm a huge fan of everything that is first person. So it was one of the things that I tried, and I discarded it. It's like, obviously it's really cool because it feels like you are in the court, right? It's the I can really relate to the way the ball is moving and where it's going, but it's really difficult to judge your distance from the ball and understanding what's going on. So and yes, you know, obviously we have anime girls, so we want the players to see them, so we're probably going to have like an element of you know, my wife is doing the graphics for the girls, so obviously she's into clothing. So hopefully we're gonna have a lot of crazy clothes and shoes and accessories. So who knows? Maybe even girls will enjoy this game. What is targeted as input AI? Is it optimized for controller? My main target would be something like the Steam Deck. So I'm right now. I'm playing with the controller, just with an Xbox controller. It's a very good question. Considering how the movement works right now, it could work. I'm trying to do things in a way where I'm not closing the door to leave the keyboard as an option. Yeah, I don't want to make it, you know, restrict the user base by making the keyboard not an option. And obviously this is something that you know, it's part of your decisions. Like the other day I was working on slices, right? So you have top spin, you have slices, And one of the things that I was thinking, well, I could use the triggers so I could have like the right trigger deciding how much top spin I want to use, and the left trigger to decide how much slice backspin I want to use. So instead of being either this or that, it's going to be an amount of both. But that instantly means that I will not be able to replicate it on a keyboard. So I ended up deciding not to do it. I ended up deciding, okay, there is a button for the slice and a button for the top spin. Yes, player in a bunny suit. Yeah, yes, something like that. Nick Strax, thanks a lot. Okay, so we can continue going. What we're trying to do today is writing the basics of the idea of having a player database. Basically, what we want to do is to have separate skills for different players coming from a file. And also for now, changing super simple things like hair color and skin color so we can prove that the thing actually works. So that's what we were doing and what we are going to do. So player DB, let's come back here. So now our player data structure is much simpler because we have we can just do s find string name. We can just unwrap. This file is going to be, it's not going to be a file that is generated by hand. Obviously, it's a file that gets generated automatically. So we can just unwrap. Control mode. Again, it's not really something that should be here in the player data. I think control mode, for now we can just leave it. So we can say player control mode AI by default. And then we can swap it at runtime. And then we have the skills. Now we already have this, so let me see what I have in this player skill. The thing is that the player skills, I don't think I'm using them. Let me see. Probably I do. Yeah, no, I'm not using them, right? So this save speed, power speed, accuracy, I'm not really using them at the moment. I'm using how much top spin, how much backspin. So let's try to use them 1 second in the game and see how it goes. So I think we have somewhere a function that is called shot speed, and it's an implementation of player, which is fine because the player knows the skills, right? So for example, we could start to do things like so ground stroke, then we change for sides. And what we could do, we could get the stroke skill, right? Which is going to be a match of side. Okay. So if it is a forehand, we return a reference to self skill. What is it? Data skills forehand. Right, and if it is a backhand, we return a reference to our backhand data. Right, so now we have the stroke skill. Hold on. Match, okay. So we should do this before the match. Right, that's better. So now we have the stroke skill, and we can do for the save, we can do the save speed. For this, we can do the power speed, and for this, we can do we don't have. Okay, let's create it. So now I'm gonna create something that is a little bit counterintuitive, because in the code for now I was using the word backspin, which is a little bit more correct from a physics point of view. But the fact is that in tennis we call it slice. We don't call it backspin most of the time. The word for it is really slice. So what we really looking here is slice speed. And probably I should rename I should rename that backspin. So for example, backspin, we could rename it into slice. Where else I'm using it? Backspin. Okay, this is the amount of spin when we do a slice. So this we could call it slice backspin to understand that, okay, this should really, it becomes a negative number. Okay, so so back in the shot speed. Okay. So here now we have the slice speed. Okay, easy enough, right? This one. And I could probably also add, because we put it a serve. Serve is a shot skill as well, right? So serve shot skill default. Okay. And our serve speed, we can do self data skills serve save speed, right? And so on and so on and so on. Although no, this is because I should do something like this. I should do something like this, right? Because the idea is that we want to have the skill, the player skill stuff. We want it 0 to 1, right? Because I'm interested in the relative values between them, and then if I want to change the speed of in the entire game, it's easy to do. Power speed, and then slice. Slice speed. Okay. That sounds okay. Probably, I bet that every time I call the shot speed, probably in one place, I'm also gonna call slice. I'm gonna call the spin, get spin. Yeah, here you go, get spin. So I think we should really put this together. So what really this should be, something like shot values, shot, because the idea is that we're returning a bunch of stuff. So I think we're going to return speed, accuracy, and spin, right? So shot, what can we call it? It's not really shot values, shot, I mean, shot data. Probably shot data, right? So the idea is that we might have some structure with these informations to make it super obvious what we're doing, right? So struct shot data, right? And it's gonna be speed, accuracy, and spin. Right? And that's what we're returning from this guy, right? So this is going to be our speed. So what we're going to do is return a shot data where we have speed. Accuracy for now we are not using it, so let's put 1. And then spin, we can grab that function that we have from here, right? So that's it. We just grab this. Right, so we can do let spin equal this. Okay. I think I can probably do it as a tuple here. Right. So for the serve, for now, we can just say we have 0 spin. And then for the ground stroke, the stroke skill, stroke skill spin. What is this? Top spin. I don't know why it's not happy. Shit. All right, that's why it's not happy. My parenthesis in the wrong place. Okay, and then for the volleys, we just assume backspin everywhere. I think for now we can put 0. I think volleys are not really working in the game. They might even crash, so we don't go to the net. All right, so that's what was doing here. So that's cool, right? And we have our spin. All right. So here now we have our shot data. Right? And this one, we delete this method. Right. And here we go, shot data speed and shot data spin. Shot data spin. That looks all right. And same stuff. So shot data spin. It makes sense. How is game dev in Rust? Imagine you have to build a game engine, etc. from scratch. I did. It's true that my last game was in Rust with a custom engine. So this engine that I'm using right now, it's an evolution of the one that I did for my last game. a big evolution, because I moved from DirectX 11 to Vulkan, so the entire renderer is completely different. But it's also true that at the moment it's much simpler than the renderer I had in my old game, because I'm targeting more anime rendering. So I'm not going to trying to do any kind of realistic rendering. It's not true that you have to write your own engine, because there is especially an engine called Bevy in Rust, which personally I don't use. I never even tried, but it's definitely an option. So if you're interested in that, you can definitely check out Bevy. The thing with Bevy is that it's you have to I just put the name here so you understand. So this is the Bevy engine. It's a code first, well, code only engine. So it doesn't have like an editor like something like Unity or Unreal. It doesn't have an editor yet. So they claim they will have an editor. The thing with Bevy is that this is very you have to marry the idea of the what is called ECS, entity component system. It's completely based on that idea, so you have to go all the way into that. Personally, I don't use it, but it's growing. So it's absolutely an option. So again, we wrote a lot of code to be back exactly in the situation where we were, but now we can do something interesting, which is when we are creating our players, which is, I think, somewhere here. Yeah. So here we are creating the skills as a default, right? Let's give it a try. Let's see what happens. Right, so let's see that like in real life, I'm really slow and moving, right? And then my serve, so it's gonna be a shot skill, right? Right, and let's say that my second serve is very good. All right, my first serve is very good. All right. My slice serve is also very good. My accuracy doesn't matter for now, so just put this. Top spin, we're not using it. Backspin, we're not using it for the serve. Backhand, then we create a forehand shot skill for the forehand. All right, and again, so my forehand. Let's make my forehand really good. All right, I was like. Slice on a forehand, no. Like this. Top spin 6 and slice 6, right? And then let's have like a shitty backhand. Right? So the backhand, the speed for the safe speed is like 25. Super slow. Power speed is like 35. Like slice speed. To accuracy, we are not using it. Top spin, nothing. 0.05. And slice backspin, we can have backspin. Okay? So we create this player. It's not only ECS, everything is multi-threaded, so you always have to keep in mind the order of system execution. Yes. Yes, also that. Right. So now we should see the effects of those skills that I gave myself. So if I go play a match, let's see how it feels to have to struggle with my backhand. So my forehand is like, all right. The other girl is just killing me straight away. But I'm very slow at moving. That feels familiar. Ah. Ah. I'm so slow. Ah. All right. We made a point. Oh my god. It feels so slow to move. I don't feel the difference in power that much, to be honest, on the backhand. Ah. Ah. Well, we're managing to make a game, maybe. No. I won't get to that. Ace, take that. 1-1. All right. Okay. I can feel the difference in. Yeah, my forehand is going much faster. Let's try some slice. Sadly, I don't have the animation. I'm not gonna get this. Try some slice with the backhand. I don't have the animation, so. Ah, yeah. Ah. I feel like I literally cannot move. Ah! Ah! The speed is really the thing that I'm noticing the most. Ah! Let me make it a little bit more obvious on this backhand. Let's go really slow. Right, let's go 0.5. I wonder what happens if I put 0.5 on my backhand. It's gonna be like a disaster, an absolute disaster. That's right. Come on. Ah, yes, got it. So slow in moving. Oof, good. One zero. Ah, out. Definitely you don't want to have a character that doesn't move like this one. Break point straight away. Saved by the serve. Ah! You need to train. All right, that works. So now let's move on. You got your own render engine with Dash, right? Yes, that's correct. I was wondering if you are concerned about stability on different system configurations. A little bit, yes. Especially like it was very interesting. I think it was in this last version, for example, Godot. in Windows defaults now to DirectX 12, and the reason why they're doing it is because there seems to have been problems with the AMD drivers on Vulkan. I'm hoping that my render is quite simple, so I'm a little bit worried, yes. But I'm not worried to the point where I want to rewrite my engine in DirectX 12, so I'm not that worried. So if it happens, it happens. I will blame AMD and hope for the best. Yeah. I did a little bit of stuff in Jai with DirectX 12. In Jai it doesn't look good. You know, obviously the big problem with DirectX 12 is really like a C++ API. So if you have a language that has you know, all the languages have an FFI, so the way they talk to other languages is mostly with a C interface. So trying to interact with the C++ API through a C interface is not fun. So for example, in Jai, to talk with DirectX 12, you have to do this thing where, let me see if I have renderer DirectX 12. The way you call the stuff is, for example, something like this, where this in C++ will be something like dev create root signature. Right, and then it will have all these other parameters, right? And what is happening in the Jai interface is that you have to put the type of dev underscore the method you're calling, and then you have to pass dev as a first parameter, which is fundamentally what the COM system in Windows does under the hood. But obviously, it makes the code be full of this stuff, which is not fun. It works, but it's not fun. But yeah, to answer your idea, DirectX API is C++. Yeah, EU. Yeah, exactly. exactly. So yes, I'm worried. The thing is that is not. I'm worried in general about these new APIs. It's not just Vulkan, it's also DirectX 12. Obviously, I had my 6 months experience back in Kunos Simulazioni working on Assetto Corsa Evo, and I think I never with DirectX 11, that is, you know, what I used back in the days to do the first Assetto Corsa, and that we were also using for Assetto Corsa Competizione. It was Unreal, but Unreal 4, so it was DirectX 11. It was pretty much smooth sailing. You know, I don't remember ever having to deal with the guys at NVIDIA or AMD because things didn't work. Now with Assetto Corsa Evo, the poor graphic guy is constantly having to get in touch with the guys from AMD. Hey, why is crashing on this graphic card? You know, what I'm doing wrong. So in general, these APIs are very powerful, but they also, the amount of things that you can do to screw it up, it's huge. Right now, I'm a little bit worried because, well, like for example, at a certain point, I had like a mini PC that I set up to run Blender for my wife to work on it. And when we tried to launch the game in Jai, it crashed, and it was like, okay, what is happening? And there was something that I was doing in Vulkan that was completely fine with NVIDIA. So it was my mistake, but it absolutely worked both on NVIDIA, and it was working on Proton on the Steam Deck, but then on this mini PC AMD didn't work. right? So it was my mistake, but the validation is not telling you that you're doing anything wrong. So it was quite difficult to find. Yeah, don't the validation layers? No, that's the thing. It's like they are good, but they're not that good, right? So they don't catch everything. So it's way harder, right? It's way harder than it should be, but it's obvious that that's where the industry is going, right? The industry is going into a world where the small company or even the indie dev that does its own engine, it's just a dying breed, right? It's not a thing anymore. So most people just use an engine. So you have developers that work on Unity, Unreal, Godot, Unigine, and so on, and they deal with this shit. They deal with all the API, and then you have the game developers that develop the game that don't really deal with this stuff that much, right? They don't have to worry about this stuff. So for a solo developer like myself, try to write an engine. I think the time is over. I think it's at this point. I do it because I'm lucky enough to be in a situation where I can afford to do it. But it doesn't make any sense from a business perspective. It doesn't make any sense. And obviously what I'm getting is a huge amount of boost in performance compared to using something like Godot, but it's a huge cost. I started from the fact that my engine was already ready to go. Like when I started to work on this game last month, I had both my Jai engine and my Rust engine pretty much at the same level. But that took me a couple of years to get there, right? So if I was starting really, really from scratch, they will add like a couple of years to the development. It doesn't make any sense, right? So we'll see. It's going to be the first experience for me to release something in Vulkan, and hope for the best. How do you feel Generation works great in Steam, Linux with Proton? I wouldn't say it works. I mean, yes, it works good on Linux. On the Steam Deck, the UI doesn't have some, like in this one, I'm building it for something like the Steam Deck from day one, right? So from day one, I can take my pad and control the UI. Right. For example, you cannot do this in Hydrofoil Generation, right? Because it's not really something that I was thinking at the time. You're currently trying to do it mainly for learning. Yes, especially if you want to be an engine programmer, an engine developer, and you want to work in Unreal and Unity or whatever, then obviously, yes, you have to go through learning the APIs. Is very, very difficult. It's really hard. The meme that it takes 1,000 plus lines to get a triangle on the screen in Vulkan is absolutely true. When I started learning 3D, I was lucky because I started with OpenGL back in the days, and you could get the window going with something called glute with one function call, and five lines of code to handle a little bit of the game loop, and then you could draw with GL vertex and get a triangle on a screen with 20 lines of code. It was a very gentle introduction. And the cool thing about, I still remember, OpenGL at the time was quite easy, at least on NVIDIA, to make things fast, because there was something called the display list. I think they were called the display list, where basically the idea is that you will record your commands. So you learn to program with things like GL Vertex. And then if you wanted to make it fast, you will do like begin draw list, I don't remember, display list or draw list. And then you will write exactly the same code, right? And instead of going to the screen, it will go into this display list. And then you could draw the entire display list with one call. And it was super fast. It was super, super fast at the time. So it was much, much easier. I wrote what percentage of time do you think engine dev takes ongoing? Do you regularly have to tweak it? Yes. Yeah, especially because I don't really think in terms of engine. For me the engine is the game, right? So I don't really have a huge separation between the two. So yes, it's you constantly end up there, and there are things that are not there and I will have to do. Like, for example, I'm always complaining that, you know, right now we have so this scene is quite complex because we have the sun coming from here, but here we have actually lights illuminating this part. So you can see a little bit that there is some illumination here from the lights. And this is giving a little bit of shape to this, but there is no shadow. There is no shadow from the light on the top. So that's something that I will have to figure out how to do it and write it down. Right? Where if you use something like a real Unity Godot, right? You select your light and you check the checkbox for cast shadows, and you move on with your game, right? So it's it takes time. But I said this many times. The thing for me is that it takes less time to do it this way, to work with an engine, to work with my own engine, then the cost of losing the motivation if I use something like Unity and Godot. You know, eventually what happened for me when I work with those engines is that I lose motivation. I don't feel as involved with the game as I am if I'm writing my own engine. I wrote a simple OpenGL render following a tutorial back in the days. Back in college, they tried to teach us OpenGL 1. Yeah. That wasn't even the newest version back then. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know how many years you're talking about, but OpenGL 1, I don't think it was even a thing on Windows. I think Windows was already 1.1. Yeah, so Windows was already 1.1 in their software implementation in the 90s. And the way it worked at the time, I remember, you know, I was doing mostly 2D programming, actually a tennis game. Yeah. And I wanted to explore 3D. I wanted to start explore 3D, and I stumbled over OpenGL, and I started to use it, and it was the software version, and the performance were just, it's like one frame every 3 seconds, right? Even to do like one texture quad or something like that. And the way it worked at the time was that at a certain point, Quake shipped with something called the GL Quake. And GL Quake was a DLL that was implementing a small subset of OpenGL 1.1 that was the one that Quake, that version of Quake was using, and that was using the 3DFX video card. So I'm talking about the 90s, right? And the trick was basically now I could write my OpenGL code, stick that DLL in the folder of the program, and it will run accelerated on the graphic card. And now you could actually start to do actual 3D. Yeah, with the begin and end thingies, which is something that, you know, you can see my I have this stuff in every engine that I do, including things like Assetto Corsa. We had this, where basically I have something that I use to do. In this game, I'm not using it for the UI. For example, in Hydrofall Generation is to do the entire UI, but to do all the debug stuff, lines, or draw stuff for debug and so on. That looks like OpenGL, right? So something like this. Let's see if I can find something where I'm actually using it. Yeah. Yeah, for example, in the editor, this is in the editor to show the skeleton, right? It kind of looks a little bit like OpenGL. Right. Yeah, I remain attached to that idea. It kind of works when you want to do, especially stuff in wireframe. Right? Tirak, hello. How you doing? It looks like classic OpenGL. Yeah. Obviously, it's not. I don't use it for anything that is like performance intensive. It's just for debug stuff. But for example, the other day I was doing the training mode, where you had to do the drill to put the ball into the 4 cones here, right? And probably the way, so I was saying, okay, I think I need to give a feedback to the player. So we're gonna need a couple of, so in this case, this is super simple, this exercise, but you can imagine in the future, there will be drills like, okay, 4 balls here, 1 ball here, right? So there will be more cones here. So 4 balls here, 1 ball here, or like, 3 balls here, then come to the net and 1 ball there, things like this. We want to give information, visual information to the players where, here is this is your target for your next shot, right? And those are the kind of stuff that probably I'm going to do with that thing, right? With my OpenGL kind of stuff where I just want to throw a quad in here, right? That kind of blinks. And when the ball bounces and is good, it becomes green and it goes like meow. And if it's, if you go out, it's going right? How do you aim? The way it works, the way the game works is that I move very slow because now we put our character very, very slow. So I move up to a point where I press my button. The moment I press my button, I stop moving and I start to aim, right? So the way it works is that I press the button, aim, and release the button to shoot. Right? So aim, release the button, and shoot. And the game is calculating the timing. So how good was your timing to actually hit the ball in the right place, a right distance in front of you. And then eventually, there is also going to be an element of your lateral distance with the ball, I think. So it's going to be a combination of timing and so if I go like this, right, where I'm really, going straight into the ball, it's not going to be good. You might notice now that the girl is sliding. The moment I open, the girl is sliding because right now I'm doing something like it's auto-adjusting to move at the right distance to actually hit the shot. So it's doing this sliding. The idea eventually is to have like an additional animation for the feet. So we are preparing, but we're also moving with the feet. where so it's level sliding. It will be that kind of adjustment, which is a thing in tech. But it depends a lot. It depends. You know, it will depend on the testers. It's also depend on what kind of game is going to be, because obviously, if the game is going to be more how you say, stats based, where you know you improve your character, now you have a better forehand, then we don't have to go that deep into making, you know, the timing and the distance that important. The other way is to make the skill of the player, you as a player, more important in the game than the actual ability of your characters. So it's going to be more of a balance, right? It's going to be a matter of getting people to test it and get feedback and try to understand, like, okay, no, it's too difficult, it's too easy, right? So we can rebalance stuff. Which physics library? I don't, for this game, I'm not using physics at all. I mean, all the ball movement is coded by hand because it's easy. For hydrofoil generation, I use Rapier. Is a physics library written in Rust, so it's very convenient to use from Rust. So I have a feeling that, for example, if I hit the cone, right, I want to have the cone jumping and tumbling, right? So it's probably something that I'm going to do with Rapier. I will have to find a way to combine the fact that I'm moving the ball, and then I want Rapier to do the thing. I still have to decide how precise I want to be with collisions with the environment here. Because obviously I can do things like in a more simplified way. Like, for example, I could build like a simple collision box around this thing, and then it's easy to write it by hand to have a collision with this guy. But if I want to have like a more precise collision, you know, are we actually hitting the chair? Then probably something like Rapier will have to be included, and then we'll have to have some effect on the ball and so on. I only have experience with Bullet, but sadly it seems like development has stopped there. Well, you know, the thing is that when it comes to physics engines, there isn't really much that you can add. I think Bullet is pretty much feature complete, because if I remember correctly, they have everything you need. They have the soft body, they have the collision system, they have, yeah, I think, you know, they have the joints. I don't think I think the newest engine is Jolt, but I don't think it does things. I don't think it does things that Bullet doesn't do. They all do pretty much. There is many stuff. You mean there is many stuff that is missing, or many stuff that it does? So many stuff it does. Yeah. What I'm saying is that they all do the same thing. The engine that I use for Assetto Corsa is called ODE, Open Dynamic Engine, and I've been using it for 25 years or something like that. And it gets some updates, but yeah, it pretty much does everything. You know, the collision system is not that good. But in fact, Assetto Corsa has always problems with collisions. But it's more a usability problem. It's more an API thing. It's more an approach that is different in ODE compared to the other physics engines. In other physics engines, you create a rigid body. Usually you already attach a shape on it. And once you attach a shape to a rigid body, they collide, right? Then you have to set the filters, what can collide with what. But it pretty much happens without you doing anything. While in ODE, you actually have to write the entire loop for the collision. So you have to go through the broad face and then, you know, the narrow face, and then you will get the contact, and then you will have to add contacts manually, which is good because you understand much better what is really happening in the engine. On the other hand, there's a lot of code. It also gives you a lot of flexibility to interact with your own code. But sometimes you can also do like very stupid bugs, you know, because the interface is not as simple as the other languages. But yeah, I think when it comes to physics engines, they pretty much do what all of them, you know, I think you could use all of them and have very similar results. You know, whether it's Jolt, physics, ODE, Bullet. Bullet, I never used it. I never used it because it was giving me a little bit of a ick because at the time it was really C++. So I liked ODE more because it was more like a C API. Although Assetto Corsa was C++, but when I choose an API, I like the simplicity of C. Bullet had this. C++ is always a little bit also complex to compile. Yeah, it's complication. The worst is really Jolt. Jolt is really C++, like really, really, really C++. So I was using it in my Jai stuff. And the way I was using it was basically, I wrote like a bunch of C functions that will simplify what I was trying to do. Like, so I'll like create body, and it was like a C function. They will go through all the C++ nonsense in Jolt. So I was able to actually use it from Jai, because Jai, I mean, potentially I think you can speak with C++, but it's not a nice experience. So I'm really glad that Rust has Rapier, because I don't have to. Right now, I don't have any code at all in C++. In Hydrofall Generation, I started, like, for example, I started with ODE in Hydrofall Generation, just because I was like, okay, this is a new language, I don't know it, at least let me use something that is familiar. So I was writing the FFI functions by hand myself. It's not difficult with ODE. And it went for quite a long time with ODE before I discovered Rapier, and I was like, I really want to reduce the amount of code that I have in C to compile. So right now in my code, I don't have anything in C++. It's all Rust. So it's all Rust. I don't have anything. Also, I remember in Hydrofall Generation, also Steam, all the Steam stuff were things that I did in C++. I think now there is a crate in Rust. So definitely the environment is maturing. Also, the forward declaration, yeah, that feels wrong. For example, you have an entity which holds behaviors, and the behaviors needs the entity, so you need to forward declare. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's the entire forward declaration header files. It's all very unfortunate in C++, and sadly, there is no intention to change it. And if you speak with people that like C++, they will tell you that having header file is a good thing, because you know what a class is doing, which is yeah, it's difficult to comment without 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 becoming an insult. But yeah, I'm glad I don't have to work in C++. Obviously, it was a big part of my career, but I went back to it for 6 months in Assetto Corsa Evo in Kunos Simulazione, although I didn't write that much code, but I couldn't wait to get out and come back to something that feels so much better, like Rust or Jive. Headers file makes sense for C, but they still suck. Yeah, I don't think they make sense in C, because if you look at all the C replacements, right, whether it's Jai, Odin, Zig, D, nobody has that shit because it's completely useless. It's not necessary at all. It's just doesn't make any sense. It is not needed. C++ people need to be a knowledge about the existence, about IDE. Yeah, I mean, the thing with the IDE and autocomplete, it really depends. I don't know if it is a generational thing or I don't know. Like, for example, obviously, I look up a lot to Jonathan Blow, but when it comes to this kind of stuff, for example, there is no agreement, right? He doesn't see the value in autocomplete. He doesn't see the value in auto formatting. And personally, I remember my first exposure to auto formatters was in Go. I wrote the Assetto Corsa server in Go. And the thing that I noticed, and instantly, because I remember at the time I was still, when I started with Go, I was still coding in a more like Microsoft style. So I was doing this kind of stuff. If people, right. And then I will put, new line, brace and so on. So basically the brace like this, right? And I remember that this thing in Go doesn't work, and the auto formatter will change it to this style, right? And I remember at the beginning for me it was like, forget it, I cannot use this thing. Like only idiots don't put a new line before a brace. And then I started to see the value in the fact that I could go into any Go repository on the internet and it will look as if it was my code, because the formatting was exactly the same. And the naming convention was all the same. And Rust does the same thing, and I think there is a huge value in that. Yeah, there is a huge value that in something like C++ in Assetto Corsa, unless you have somebody that is really enforcing styles, like in Assetto Corsa, I could look at the code and instantly tell who wrote it, just because the style is different, right? The style in formatting, or the style in how things are called, if they are a local variable and so on. And I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think it's a good thing. I think there is a huge value in having all the code looking the same, and everybody will find something that they don't like. Like, when I moved to Rust, for snake case was very weird for me, because I wrote a lot of Java. So camel case was the thing that was more familiar to me. Assetto Corsa is all camel case. So doing things like snake case for me was weird. And now it's like, okay, you know, I wrote so much that it... So all these discussions are pretty stupid when it comes to style. But, you know, there are people that don't see the value in that. For me, it's like, I don't understand how people can even work without being able to do this. Right? Like I'm following the logic. All right, okay, so we go here and then we go here, right? And then we go here and then we go that. Okay, what that do? Right? How, you know, and instead of doing this, right, and go there and follow the logic, I will have to start, okay, Control Shift F, build simple where it is, where it is not. I don't get it. And I understand that eventually your brain starts to work that way, and you have a, like, for example, one thing, I'm ranting a lot today, Jesus Christ, it's Saturday, right? I'm not in the mood to write code, I'm ranting a lot. I think there is one thing that I remember when IDE were not that good. Like, for example, when I was in Assetto Corsa, right, and I wanted to think about, okay, where is that class or where is that function, right? I will know in which file it will be. Right? I will know. Now, I've been working on this for a while. If you tell me, okay, where is that function, I have no idea which file it is. So it is true that an IDE, it's a little bit like driving with the navigation, right? And me, I'm very often I force myself to turn off the navigation when I'm driving. Especially I moved here to Australia, and I was like, no, I want to understand. I want to understand how I go from here to there. I want to learn how the where the streets go, right? So it is true. It is like, you know, you become completely dependent on the IDE. But for me, it's such a huge help, and it's one of the things that actually made me decide to end up remaking this game in Rust, because originally I wrote it in Jai, and then I wrote it again in Godot, and then I said, no, fuck it, I'm gonna do it with my own engine, but I'm gonna do it with Rust, because the tooling is so good. You know, the Rust LSP, in my experience, is unbeatable. I don't, well, obviously, if you, maybe something like C# has a better story, maybe, but I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure the LSP in C# at the moment, because at the time, it was fantastic, right? I remember C# in Visual Studio. It was a fantastic experience. It was like, oh, wow, this is so fast and works so well. And it's so smart. You can literally, like, you know, dot tab, it will guess what you're writing. But I think right now the Rust LSP is absolutely fantastic. Let me read what you guys are saying during my rant. Yeah, where you place the brace thing. Yeah, programmers can have fights about the most stupid stuff, right? And the brace and the formatting is like an endless discussion. C++ is even worse because you can use very different features of the language to achieve the same thing. That is so true, right? C++ has got so much stuff that it's the only language almost that you have to write a document to decide what is allowed or what is not allowed. Is ridiculous. Meanwhile, C++ coming in with Pascal Kale method, yes, that's something that for me it's always super weird. But it's Microsoft, right? It's also the same. Their C++ code is the same. So if you read, well, the old Win32 stuff had the Hungarian has the Hungarian notation still all over the place, which is ridiculous. Again, I mean, it made sense before IDs. It made, you know, if you don't know what Hungarian notation is, I think it was invented by a guy that was Hungarian. I don't know if it was in Microsoft or somewhere else, but it's the idea that you can, so if you have a function that let's say is a string. So in C++, in Windows 32, you see a lot of stuff that, you know, variable that is called like something like, you know, which means, and then the name of the variable, right? And this is like long pointer to a string, or you will see like, you know, I foo, right, is an integer, you know, b foo is a boolean, right? So this is something called the Hungarian notation that made sense probably at the beginning of time where ID were not there, but right now it's ridiculous. There are people in C++ that I remember so many fights in Assetto Corsa because there were people that were writing like members with m_foo, and it's like, why? Because otherwise I don't know there is a member. You know, you go with a mouse on the top of it and you will know. In my C++ code, I tend to do the opposite. So I tend, for example, members are camel case and every local variable is snake case. You know, so my C++ code looks like that usually. So I do the opposite, right? You know, I want to know if it is a local variable. I never do the underscore thing. I hate the, you know, underscore name. It's terrible. But yeah, you know, every programmer has its own stuff. I like C++ and I use Visual Studio with Visual Assist X, which I quite like. People can say whatever they want about Visual Studio as an IDE, but it has by far the most powerful debugger. Yeah, the thing is that my experience is I'm using the debugger way more now, but back in the days, even 5 years ago, I'm really like a printf warrior. I tend to be a printf warrior, but I think there are reasons for that. That most of the time, especially when I was working at Assetto Corsa, it was very unlikely that I was concerned about a value in a particular moment. I was more interested in how a value was changing through time. So ending up with a, you know, with a log file with, you know, 300 printf that will tell me how a particular thing is moving in the car was very typical for me. So I was never, you know, a huge in debugger. And the other problem that we have in game development, at least before, was that most of the time we were running in release mode. And when you're running in release mode, the code you see is not really the same anymore after the optimization. So debugging becomes difficult. And this is something that actually I notice a lot in Rust. Because even with the lowest optimization, I don't think I'm using the lowest optimization. I think I'm using one above. No, optimization level 0. So I'm using the lowest optimization, but still there are a lot of times that you get into a function, it's like, no, this variable was optimized, so I don't have it, I cannot see it. That was one nice thing about Jai, because the compiler, the language is so simple that what you see is what you get in the debug version, the compiled version. So the debug experience was really nice. You just need to remember all the API in detail. How many people work on Assetto Corsa code base? at the very beginning, I was the only programmer. So Assetto Corsa 1. So up to, I think, up to the first early access release, I was the only programmer for everything that happens from the moment you press start race. So Assetto Corsa was built in, Assetto Corsa is 2 executables. So it's one executable, and it's same thing with Netcar, my older games. It's something that I tend to do a lot. I tended to do a lot. Now I don't do it anymore. But the idea is that there is one executable for choosing car, track, what kind of race you want to do, the opponents, and so on. And that was written by another guy. Actually, I didn't even ever use that because I had my own version. So the way it works, you had this executable where you choose what you want to do. This executable will save an ini file that will tell the simulation, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do a race with this car, blah, 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 in this track with these conditions. And it will then start the simulation program, which is the one that I wrote. The simulation program will start up, will read the ini file, will create the cars and so on. So I had my own simplified version in C# to write the ini file, that it was just faster. And it's something very similar, because there is one thing that I really don't like is to go through the UI. For example, here I have 2 options to start the game. One is goes into the UI, right? And it means that I'm going to change something. So I'm going to go from training to match, right? And then I start the game. And then the game starts. And then I have another option that I call no launcher, which is basically is going to bring me back to the game with the last settings, right? So if I go here, I will not go through the UI. I will go straight into the game in a match. So same match as before. So that how Assetto Corsa worked. So up to the first early access, I wrote the entire simulation, and then we got a junior programmer that joined us called Giovanni, and he helped a little bit up to version 1, I think. Then we started to get more people. So probably by the time we released the last update for Assetto Corsa, I think it was probably 3 of us working on the simulation part, on the race part, and the guy on the launcher was one guy, so he was working there. So now is way more people. Still for a game company doing a game as big as and ambitious as Assetto Corsa Evo is quite a joke. I think it's probably programmers, probably 10 programmers, something like that. It's ridiculous, right? It should be 50. Considering what they're trying to do, if you look at other companies, right, it should be more like in the 50s, trying to do like free roam. One of the things that I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to talk about this. Simone, how you doing? I have a sim racing coding question. Go ahead. I'm a little bit behind with the question. It gets quite slow. It also likes to run build script by default on every save. What are you talking about? What are we talking about? Let me say this. IntelliJ plus Java is the best developer experience I ever had. For example, in C++, the last 2 times that I worked in C++ professionally, I was using Rider. And one was with Unreal 5. Unreal Engine 5. And Rider is such a, to me, looks like a much better user experience than Visual Studio with Unreal. And also in Assetto Corsa Evo, I was using Rider instead of Visual Studio. I work with Net Framework now with Copilot integrated. Sometimes I'm scared of how accurate it suggests you the code with the coding style. Well, I remember Copilot was actually able to suggest things in Jai, which is amazing considering that I don't think there is a lot of Jai on GitHub. So name, actually he was the Hungarian guy, Petzold. Petzold was like super famous, like is the guy that wrote the, you know, the Bible to code for Windows. Like the Petzold was like a super important book for people of my generation. Petzold, programming Windows. Programming with Windows 5th edition by Petzold. So this book was absolutely essential at a certain point in my career. This issue wouldn't exist if self-diss wasn't implicit, which is what Rust does, right? And I totally agree. Obviously, it makes the code more verbose. I like how Jai, I think John got sick of having to rewrite stuff, because obviously it's convenient in C++ if you write a method and you don't have to repeat this, right? You know, in Rust you get this self. So in Jai you have something that is called using, where you can actually use a particular name. In my Jai code I don't use but I do end up with things that are very long. Yeah. But there is one thing that I think Jai, there are some stuff that are just genius, right? There are stuff that is like, why don't every language has this? Like, for example, so in a matrix, all right, you have something called overlay, right? Used to have another name. I think this is the latest compiler, and John changed it into overlay. So what's the idea here? The idea is that I have a data structure, and I can say, okay, of this data structure, I also have something called left, which starts at this, and it's actually a vector tree. Right? So that means that in my code, I can write something like matrix.left, so mat.left, and I'm writing that vector tree inside that matrix. Right? And to do this in Rust, I have like methods of matrix to do it, which force you to do things like this, right? And that's just a fantastic thing. Like, for example, I don't have it, but you can imagine that, for example, for vectors, right? So for vectors, I have things like an overlay where I can get something called component that gives me this view as an array. Or you can have an XY that is like a vector 2. Right? Or you could do like overlay, you could do something like overlay X and you call it R. Right? And basically what you're doing now right? So now you can call your X, you can also call it R, and you can call it your Y, you can also call it G, and so on. It's really it's something that is really, 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 really nice. Really nice. I really love it. The Rust Analyzer. I don't know. Probably my code is not big enough, but it doesn't give me problem with speed. How come iRacing has really good weather and track effect and other sims are years behind? It comes down to how good the people working on it, right? It's I think this is something that I find that sometimes there is something that gamers don't take gamers as a bad words, but obviously gamers and developers think in a different way, and I think gamers tend to have this idea that in game development it's all about what you want to do. So if you want to something into the game, you're gonna have it just because you want it, and sadly it doesn't work like that. Right? It doesn't work. It's not even close to work like that. Right? It's what you can do. It's not what you want to have. Because if it was that simple, then every game will have the best of everything, and it would be effortless. But the reality is that it doesn't work like that. So you might say, I want to have like the best AI in the racing game in the world. That's not going to bring you any closer to have it. You still have to solve the problem to have the best AI. It's an incredibly hard problem to solve. In case of iRacing, I think one of the things that for me is difficult to understand is, so when you say they have good weather, I imagine what you're talking about is the fact that they have a wet system where they have like a dry and wet trajectory that depends on where cars are driving. So if cars are driving on a particular line, that part of the track gets more dry. That is not difficult to do, and it's something that, for example, we did in Assetto Corsa many times. The big problem for us was, okay, that's very simple to do in single player. How are we going to do it in multiplayer? Because it's quite a lot of data. Because you can imagine that, it's not that difficult to get your track and figure out how you can separate your roads, build a grid, right? And then once you have a grid, it's very easy. Car pass over the grid and they pass over the cell. You drive the cell by a certain amount, blah, blah, blah. The question is that grid is quite a lot of data. And you go like, okay, now I have somebody that is joining a race, right? And how am I going to update the entire situation of the track? That's a lot of data to send to this guy that just connected, right? So how to do that in an efficient way? And it's possible that, I don't know if iRacing still has the system where I'm not sure because I haven't played iRacing for a long time. I remember they had the system where basically you had to connect before the race start. And if that's still the case, you understand that that makes the problem easier, because everybody agrees on the situation at the start, and then you can calculate it locally, right? Or you can send like small updates and so on. But if you have a situation where you can have clients connecting in the middle of the situation, like we had in Assetto Corsa, it was always the problem. It was always like, oh, okay, you know, we can do it in single player. We can probably make it look good enough. I think also making look good is not that easy. With wet is probably easier. With things like rubber is not that easy. I think if the artist is able to draw the rubber on the road, is always going to look better than anything that you do procedurally. But then you go like, okay, how am I going to update all this data if a client connects in the middle of the race, right, in the middle of the session? So that was always the problem that stopped us from doing it. So for something like that's why in Assetto Corsa the racing line is fixed, right? So when something gets rubbered, you know, it doesn't matter if the cars are going to go all on another part of that particular corner. Is the racing line is going to be always rubber where we decide the racing line is, which, you know, especially in competizione made sense, because the cars are all the same, so the lines are going to be pretty much the same. There is a difference in racing line depending on how much power your car has. So if you have a car that for example is struggling to put power on the ground, like if you have a Lotus 49, no aerodynamics and lots of power, you tend to do a lot of late apex. So you tend to go a lot deep in a corner, stop the car, rotate and reaccelerate out. While if you have a car that has more downforce, you round the corners more. So you don't go as late on the apex like you would with a car that doesn't like to, that is not very good at putting power on the ground. So for a game like a Competizione where all the cars were the same, made sense to do it that way. I think with Evo, they have a system. They have a system to do it dynamically, but it remains the problem remains to update it in multiplayer. Kind of a union in C, yeah, but it's not really union. It's like, you know, you're giving a particular view of your structure a different name. Jai has very pragmatic approach to language design. Yeah, it's all pragmatism. It's honestly it's quite a joy to use it, especially like, I think it works really well when you're exploring, where you're not really, where you really don't know what you're doing and you're trying to figure it out. Like, you know, it works well. It builds really fast and it allows you to say, oh fuck it, I'm gonna leak this memory, who cares, right? Say, okay, let me figure it out. Let me figure out how I'm going to do this thing, and then once I understand the problem and the solution, I will code it properly. You know, that's really I think that's really the philosophy behind Jai. While Rust is the opposite, right? Rust is like, no, you know, you have to do it right. So Rust, I think Rust works really, that's why Rust works so well when it comes to rewrite it in Rust. When you have to write something that you already know the problem and you already know the solution to the problem, Rust is really good because, you know, it allows you to formalize it really well. When you are exploring and you are not familiar with Rust, I understand it's infuriating. You know, I remember, and there were many situations during the Hydrofall generation. There were many streams where I was incredibly frustrated because I was in the middle of trying to do something, and And in the middle of it, I was forced to fight with Rust instead of solving the problem. Luckily, those situations happen a little bit more rarely now. And if they happen, I understand there is a price that I need to pay to get something that make you feel really, really relaxed when you release the software, right? I don't want to jinx myself, but I said this already, one of the best feeling I had in my career was when I pressed the button to release hydrofoil generation, because I had almost no doubt that it was working. It was like, this thing is, solid as a tank, right? There is nothing here that can surprise me, right? There is no memory leak hiding somewhere. There is no data race hiding somewhere. It's all super solid. And that's something that I think has a value in Rust. Only having to deal with logic bug is a blessing. Yes, but it's not the truth, right? Because eventually you have to handle memory. That's part of your problem, right? So Jai allows you to ignore it, but you still have to deal with it eventually. And it's always a difficult problem, right? Whether you approach it in a more like, how does Casey Muratori call it? The N1 programmer. Was it N1 programmer? Where you approach it, with the big allocation approach, no? Where you do big allocations and small allocation for temporary stuff. You still have to deal with it. Rust strict memory management makes building complex systems and data structure especially difficult. But when you know the problem and know how to utilize Rust's best language feature to model the problem elegantly, it is wonderful. I tend to agree. That's the reason why I'm using. I absolutely agree with it. It makes you work harder, but once you make the Rust compiler happy, you can be quite confident that you have a software that, it's solid. Of course, no compiler is going to save you from a logic bug. Right? It's not. If you write something stupid because your logic is stupid, that's no compiler can save you, obviously, right? But that's the same in every language. Jai has good stuff anyway, right? For example, he's got the memory debugger. So it gives you, if you forget to delete something, you run the software. I run it in debug always with the memory debugger on. Memory tracer, I don't remember even how it's called. The idea is that when you close the program, it gives you a report, and if something is leaking, it's telling you where the allocation was. So it's like, okay, stuff were allocated here and were not released, were not deleted. So that's really good. What I don't know is how good it really is, right? It's like, I honestly don't know. Like, did I have something in my code that was leaking? I have no idea. Like, because I rely on that memory debugger. So if the memory debugger is good, then you can feel it. It still does nothing with things like data race and so on. But I think it's a super cool language. It's a super cool language. Right now, we don't have the perfect solution for game development, I think, because C++ is shit. There is no way to describe it other than shit. Rust is a little bit too much. I think Rust is okay for engine development. Although, yeah, probably in engine development, probably you want to have a little bit more freedom when it comes to the way stuff are allocated. And Rust is not really good in that. So if you're doing like AAA, you want to have more control on the memory compared to what I'm doing. So Rust, from that point of view, is not great. And when it comes to gameplay programming, it's a shame because, you know, you can express stuff so well with the enums and so on, but I cannot imagine a game company. I cannot imagine gameplay programmers that know and understand Rust. It's just too much to ask. That's the thing that I'm scared when it comes to Rust. If I had like a 100 million budget to do a game, doesn't have to be 100 million. Yeah, it could also be like 20 million, 30 million budget to make a game. And basically, I have to hire a team and choose a technology. I would be very nervous to say, oh, let's go with Rust, right? Because now I have to hire programmers, right? And it gives me the impression that it could get expensive very quickly to hire 20, 30 Rust programmers. I don't know. I really don't know the market because I tend to be a lone wolf. I don't hire anybody. But if I was a company, I would consider that like a big problem because C++ game developers, I think you can find them. Whether they're good or not is another problem, but you will find them. Rust, you probably won't even find them. I think the key is not to shy away from unsafe too much. Yeah, I agree. You shouldn't treat unsafe as a forbidden. I say this already. I treat RefCell more like a. I'd rather do unsafe than RefCell. Let's put it this way. To be fair, a good programmer doesn't have much difficulty picking up a new language. I don't know. Rust is different. I've read so many experience of people that got frustrated immediately with Rust to the point that they just said, fuck it. No. It's not, learning Rust is not like learning C# or Jai or Go, right? It's not like that. You need to unlearn what you've learned to get into the Rust way. It's a little bit like trying to learn a functional language like Haskell for the first time, and you're coming from C++ and Java, and you try to learn Haskell. It's like, whoa, what's going on here? Right? So I don't know, but I'm not an expert. I don't have data. About this. But I can role play it in my head. I can role play it. Like, okay, let's say that I get Kunos Simulazioni and I'm still in there, and I go like, you know what, guys, our next game is gonna be in Rust. It's like, okay, how many of those guys are gonna be what? Right? And how quickly they're gonna be able to actually do it. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't think it's that easy. Depends on the programmer and the language. Yeah, some people take to C really easily. Well, C, because that's the thing, is like the C as a language is easy. Solving the problem with C that is hard. But the language itself, it's easy. But Rust is different. C is a great foundational knowledge. Yeah, I don't know machine. I think when you say machine code, you obviously probably refer to assembler or something like that. Assembler, I've never done anything at all. I think my only exposure in assembler was I was trying to write a compiler that would compile my language that I was doing, and it was compiling to the .NET virtual machine, so the .NET assembler. But I didn't go that far. I have a couple of books about writing a compiler in Go. I think, like many people, watching Jonathan Blow writing Jai inspired so many people. I think they are on the records, both Andrew Kelly and what's the name of the Odin guy? Red Bill. I think they're both on the record saying that watching Jonathan Blow inspired them to start Ginger Bill. Red Bill. Red Bill. Ginger Bill. Yeah, I think they both said that watching Jonathan Blow inspired them to start their own languages. So I went through a very similar phase, but it lasted very short time before I was like, you know what, I want to make games. I remember that I was working with CryEngine 3 on a game, and I believe it or not, it was one of the best experience. Well, if you see what they're doing with oh my god, my memory is so bad. What's the medieval game that was successful? Vavra's game. What's the name of the game? Shit, I even have it. I have the first one. I didn't buy the second one. The one that at the beginning of the game you throw shit to the house of a guy. Shit, I forgot. I'm getting cool. Kingdom Come. There you go. I knew you would bail me out from this. Yeah. I don't remember. I don't remember what was the thing that turned me off CryEngine. I tried a very old version. I think it probably was the Lua part. I don't remember. I haven't tried for a long time. I do embedded ARM for my job, and I haven't really needed to write a assembler yet. I think the problem is that people don't understand that the CryEngine is not made for small teams. Yeah, I think probably is also similar somehow to a real engine. Every time, you can imagine that we've been going quite a long time discussing, me and my wife know, okay, what we're going to use. And of course, as an artist, she loves the idea to have something like Unreal. The problem is that although it's free, it instantly comes with a lot of complication and cost. Like you have to set up something like Perforce, and there are so many switches that you can fuck up everything very easily, and you need a very powerful computer. So if you're using embedded specific, sometimes you need it. We're talking about assembler. It's more common in embedded, but not always required. Yeah, I would imagine that it's becoming a little bit like game development, right? So the number of people that actually touch assembler, and even people that write languages, I think right now they most what they do is write whatever intermediate representation LLVM wants. So they don't really write the code generation. I mean, Jai does, because it's got the backend, its own backend, and then it's got the LLVM. Should we write some code? I think today is just going like that. Tons of runs and no code and no click-clack. I was trying also creating an own language and decided to use C as an intermediate language. So the way, what is that language that does it? It's quite famous. There is a language that does it that way, compiled. Well, C++ used to do that, right? C++ originally was a front end to a C programming, to a C compiler. What's the language that compiled to C for games? I know you know it. I'm really getting old. It's incredible how things just, it's like I should know it, but the word doesn't come. You guys are not helping me. What is the language that compiled to C? So it's a pretty language. Zen C. No, it's not that one. What was it? Compiles to C. Zig does that? Compile to C? I don't think so. Let's see what is the one that I'm thinking. Doesn't come out here. I think it was quite popular a couple of years ago. Nim. There you go. Nim. This guy. Nim. Yeah. That's the one that I was thinking. Let's do a little bit of click-clack. Let's finish this loading. Where was it? Players DB. Players DB. Ah, so we need to load these skills. All right, let's go. Player skills. Let's go. So speed is going to be S find. Okay, so now for the skills, and here, so let's do skills separately, because when it comes to skills, now we're going to need a different section. So let skill sec, let's call it like this, is any find section, and we're looking for format skills with the number of the player index. And we unwrap it because it has to be there, right? And then we do let skills is player skills, right? We do this. Speed is gonna be skill sec find f32 speed. Whoopsie. Speed. Unwrap. Let's go back to the file. So skills. Okay, so we need to add speed. Right, so speed is 3. Skills is 3.5. I make you faster than me, you're happy. Jax is faster than Stefan. Well, that's the case. Then shot skill. Okay, this is gonna be skill sec. Find f32. How we call this? Let's do this. So otherwise, I'll do this all day. Knowing that is not. Unreachable expression. What's going on here? Okay. All right. That works. We need to add a little bit of stuff here. Well, that works. That compiles. Whether or not it works, it's to be proved. All right. Right. Okay. So I would say that so let's what's the idea here? So we have all these players. So if I create this database in the launcher, so let's say that the launcher has a player DB. And we create it from players DB new from content players player DB Tini unwrap. Because now we have two choices, right? Because at the moment, to start the game, we're really passing in the players, the entire player. So our match, I think we create the players somewhere up here. Here. That's how we do it. So these are the players that are going to play the next match. And obviously this is not going to work. So we have two options. We can copy the entire player data structure in there and send it to the game, which is reasonable. It means that it's going to work exactly the same. So in our case, this is going to look, the way this is going to look is that before we start the match, somewhere here, before we start the match, we go like self UI mem next match data players, right? It's gonna be self players DB players 0 clone, right? It's gonna be something like this. Okay. The other difference is that in the launcher now, that's the real problem. So when we bypass the launcher, this is not enough anymore. We will have to load the players. But let's make sure that this is working for the first time. All right, so something crash in the so we didn't find speed in the file. So players DB right speed. Okay, it's never okay. I never exit that loop. So players DB. So the idea here is that if we find the player, fine, otherwise we break. And we should have 2 players. Okay, so start, and the players Steph Chucks, blah blah blah. And interestingly, because if you remember, when we created the player, we made it by default being controlled by the AI. So by default now this is straight into AI mode, which is fine for now. Okay. Now, what we want to do is to add a player selection. Now let's do the player graphics characteristic, which I think is gonna be cool. So player data. Okay, so we got the player skills, and we're gonna have a structure called player visuals, or player aspect, player well, we could call it player graphics data, which is exactly what we call it in the file, right? And in this case, so this model should probably go here in the graphics, right? Okay. Okay. So we're going to have the model, right? And it's going to be, let's have hair color. And then skin color. Okay. And then here we're going to have graphics. Okay. Okay. So now in here, next match data. I don't like that I have to fill up all this stuff. So, okay. How are we going to do this? I think the best way is to have a dedicated structure called match data UI, right? And what we really have here is players, but players are an array of indices into the player DB. Court data default. Yeah, so court data, we keep it. Okay. And then what was the other thing that we have? The match type. Match type. Ah, shit, I'm putting it in the wrong place. Right. So this goes here, right? This has to have some kind of default. So we implement default for match data UI. And players is going to be 0 and 1. Court data is going to be default. And match type, do we have a default? No, but we can just put the match type match. Okay, so when we come here, this is just match data UI default. Right, so we can get rid of all this shit. Right. Okay. So now, okay, so now the concept is we have to create an actual match data, right? Now our players is gonna be this, where players is though the indices is self UI mem next match data players 0. Right. Bit cumbersome, but okay. So we delete this. The court data is going to be basically this, right? Court data. And match type is going to be type. Okay. And match type, I think now we have no reason. Yeah, because it's only data, we can actually have a clone copy, so we can just copy it without having to clone anything. Right? All right. That's okay on this side. What are the problems here? Market copy cannot be implemented for this type. Yeah, because we have to implement copy for training. No, for what? For training. For training kind. Yeah, for this one. And we're good. And here, where is the problem here? Player data, missing field graphics. Okay, and now we need to load the graphics for this, right? So let graphics is player graphics data. And we just load it from the, we're going to have something similar to this, where it's going to be graphics. It's going to be graphics sec. And model is going to be graphics sec find string model and wrap into string. Air color is going to be graphics sec find vec3 air color. And there you go. Skin color. Typo 1352 graphics. Where missing wheel where graphics sec blah 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 graphics. Yeah, I think I got it. Graphics. Okay. Okay. Now we have this problem. So how are we going to solve this? I was hoping that we could solve this later, but we can't. So we need to load. We need to load the players DB. Luckily, it's not really a big problemo. Content players DB. Right? And then we have to create the match data. Right? And again, the players is going to be players DB players 0 clone and players DB players 1 clone court data default match type is going to be UIMEM. Actually I have this stuff, hold on. Match type. I don't know if you heard my cat. I think we're missing a pub somewhere. Yeah. I see the potential here for translating this into this. It's very possible that we will need that. It's not that we need it, but it's good to have. Okay, and then match data goes like this. Oh, what do you want? Is it the entire type? Yeah. All right. So this is building. It's still not doing anything interesting, but now we can player avatar. When we create our player, we could actually now go and do some interesting stuff. We can do something, right? So for example, we could change the skin. For now it's all hard coded, so let's go check 1 second what the skin material is called. So the material is called body and face. Right. Body and face. All right. Let's go. So how are we going to do this? Model data. Material by name mute. That sounds like what we want. So we want body, wrap, set var, base color, and the base color is going to be, I really don't like this. Oh my god, every time Oh my god, I really don't like this. Okay, I need to do something here. I really don't like this. What I really want to write here, right? I want to write this. I want to write model data set material var. And then I have to write the type, right? Because the point there was not to write the type, but I want to write the type, right? Float 4. Something like this. More like vec4, because float 4 in my game means is an array. Right? And then I want to write body, and then I want to write data, graphics, skin color. This is what I want to write, right? Let's make it happen. Okay. So here we do, obviously it's gonna change our stuff. So this. So what we do is, if let some material equals self materials ether mute find m name equals name, this is value, okay, math set var, the var is the no, I have to write set material var, okay, and then the var that I want to change, so base color. So here we're gonna have var name, set var name, right? And then we have to do this stupid thing with the shader value, float 4, and then it has to become an array. So value to array. I said there's so much noise to write something really, really simple. What's wrong? And we need to, so we assume that we're setting a material, so we assume that is false, right? So we're not adding a material. We're only setting it. Okay. So the only thing that we need to change here, we need to make it into a float 4. Ah, that's a little bit better. And then we want to do the same with the material for the face. Was it face? I forgot. Oh my god, Saturday evening. Meow, owner's face. All right, okay. And then hair is called hair. Baby, look at you calling materials in a way that makes sense. Face is called face, hair is called hair. Was it hair or hairs? Because they mean different things. I think it's hair. If it is hair, you were correct. Hair color. Okay, so is it going to work? So if it's going to work, there should be a dark girl on the court. Let's have a look. If it works, we're going to have a dark girl on the court. So here, obviously, we are not applying the material yet, which is fine. Let's start the match. And yeah, that's the black girl. The hair actually look. Here is the Targaryen, a black Targaryen. What is the what's the family that they're all dead in House of Dragon? With white hair and black. It looks like the same color of the court. Same color of the court. All right. The good thing is that I should be able to go here. Well, that's very interesting because I was like at 0.2 for the hair. So and the skin color was a little bit too dark. And also reddish, right? Maybe let's rebalance a little bit.
I think they're called Belarian.
Belarian. So now we can launch like this. Are you using WGPU? No, I'm using Vulkan with Ash. So we have a super weird effects on the... Here, I don't know what's going on. I have no idea what's going on there. And on the other side, these hair are super bright. Okay, so there is something. Is it? I think I know what it is. It's because we need to set also the. We need to set also the other color. So we are in the shader, in the toon shader that I have. There is a tint. There is a tint that the material has shadow tint, right? That is slightly different from, and it's very important for the body. So the shadow tint has got this kind of reddish color, right? So the point is that if we change the base color, we have to find a way to change also this one, which is very interesting. Probably a multiplication should do. The difficult part is that we have to grab that value, right? So in our player avatar, so when we're doing this thing, we also change shit and so toon frag. We also want to change this shadow tint. Okay, so how are we gonna do this? We need to grab it first before we can change it. So we can do it two ways. I can either write a get material var that gives me the value of what I want, and then we set it. And it's good because we're going to use it everywhere. Or the other thing that I could do in this case in particular is I could write like a modulate material var, where basically I'm implying whatever is there multiplied for this value. Let's write this second one so it makes our code a little bit smaller. Well, let's write the get. We're gonna need this. So it's gonna be getting a self material blah blah blah, and this time is not getting a value but is returning an option of vec4f, right? And if we find it, so here probably we can write it in a more although if this always trips me because it's an option, so probably I cannot use the question mark materials, which I find really weird in Rust. Either find well, I don't need the mesh color because the find is gonna give me the thing, you know. Yeah, I don't think I can write. I don't want to get bother to write this in a single line. Let's just do it like this. Name is name, right? And then we have to look for the var, right? And then we do mat var, yeah, var name, right? And then we do sorry, if we do it here, we do none. Var one name we can do, and then is it like this? Or I did this the other day. Inspect. And this is a shader value, and we want to change it to SV into, I think. Is Rust smart enough to understand what I'm trying to do? Expected unit type. Inspect, no, so it's map. Expected enum, yes, and what I gave you? An option of an option. So SV is a shader value. All right, okay. So, che palle. So here we have to write if let shader value float for v equal SV, then we return some v into, else none. No. Okay. Expected option, blah, blah, blah. What you find? An option of an option. V. What is V now? V should be an array of V is an array of float. Okay, so what you don't understand into? You don't understand into. Vec4 from array V. It keeps giving me so this way. We match on this. And if this is a shader value float for v4, we return some vec or f from array v4. In any other case, we return none. You happy now? Is happy now. Okay, so that's our get material var. And then we can write the modulate. Fn modulate material var vec4, right? Which is basically going to be exactly like this. And then it's going to do if let some original val self get name var name. So if we have this material, we then do self set name, var name. And then we do the original value multiplied by the value. And I don't have an operator to multiply to vec4. And let's write it. So vec4. What we want to write is something like this. But for vec4. So just under the implementation for the vec4, this one, we also write this one. Apply f vec4, vec4, we return a vec4, we get a vec4, still a vec4, another vec4, w, self w, p, w. Good. I should be able to understand this one. What's wrong? Why? Implement, multiply, vector 4 or vector 4? It's right there. Why you don't want to do it? I don't understand. I think it's a bug with rationalizer. Yeah, I think it crashed. Restart server. Yeah, I think we crashed it. Okay, so this is working. So now it means that in our launch, where was it? Where we were doing the thing. Okay, here we can do model data, set, modulate. Rationalizer is modulate material bar vec4 body shadow tint, I think, by this, right? Shadow tint, right? Tune frag, shadow tint. All right. And we have to do this for the three of them. So for the body, for the face, and for the hair. That's it. Oof, still doing the thing with the hair. And it's still nowhere black. It's still a brownish. What the hell? It's very weird. Okay, 0. Hair color. Let's see. No, it's not working. So the next thing is probably the specular. Let's have a look in the editor. What's going on with his hair? Is it the specular that is creating the problem for us? Or the Fresnel? So base color, we're changing it to black. Ah, look at that. What is this? Shadow tint. Ah, so our code is not working, I think. Yeah, I think is our code is not working. Shadow tint. Right, let's get in. So do we get the material? Yes. Set material original value multiplied by value. So original value is that multiplied by, where is this coming from? Okay, that's girl number 1. So let's go to girl number 2. Okay. Okay. So here the value is still wrong. Because I'm using skin color instead of hair color. What an idiot. So I imagine that in the database we can also get something not completely black, and it should work. It's more like it. My hair is a little bit red. And the other girl, yeah, now we have a nice black. That is so cool. It's pretty cool. I have this very gingery hairs now. Huh? Okay. I think we are in a good shape. What time it is? Now, what is left to do for sure is something like in the launcher. Let me have a look 1 second. The player avatar for the UI. So the player avatar for the UI should also get a player data. Final references. So when we create it, so what we can do, we can create the we can create the players DB. And then we can pass in the players DB players 0 in there. And pretty much it does the same code to the point that I wonder if I should extract this function somewhere. So what this function could do, actually, so where this function could live is in player graphics data. We could have something like implement player graphics data, right? And we could have like a apply to model data, right? Model data is mutable reference to model data. And it does this, right? And this is self. So here, instead of doing it in there, what we do is data, graphics, apply to model data, and we pass in the model data, right? And we can do exactly the same thing now in the launcher. Exactly the same. And we have to pass the data. Data is a reference to player data. Hi, Stefano. You'll enjoy the live stream. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I wanted to ask you a while ago, was your first simulator Netcar Pro? Did you already told you by yourself? Yes. Yeah. In Netcar Pro, there was absolutely nobody. So I also wrote the launcher. I also wrote the UI. So, and I think Netcar comes from, so Netcar Pro comes from Netcar. So there used to be a Netcar. Netcar was like a free, it was free. It was a free software that I released. Back some years before, I was trying to do something very similar to what the guy is doing with the Grand. What is the name of that awesome game? That independent developer is working on it. Grand Circuit, something like that. Grand Circuit Pro. Yeah. So I was doing something, I was trying to do something similar. Obviously, the graphic was not this good. And my physics knowledge was not to the point where I could actually do it. But I was trying to do something in the Formula One year of 1979. That was at the time that I was writing it, that was before Schumacher in Ferrari. So we're talking about, Jesus, when Schumacher joined Ferrari? When did Schumacher, how you write Schumacher? Schumacher joined Ferrari. Michael Schumacher joined Ferrari in 1996. And then he won when? He didn't write straight away. So he wrote a couple years later. So I'm talking about a long time before, because I remember that the reason why I was doing the 79 is because it was the last time that Ferrari won the championship. And I just loved that car. I just loved the Ferrari. What was it? Was it the P4? 1979. Was it the P4? T4. 312 T4. This one. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I absolutely loved it. And that year there was also the, I think it was the first Renault Turbo 1979 Formula 1 that had a very interesting spoiler at the back. Let's see if I can find a picture. Yeah, very interesting, this kind of boxy spoiler at the back. So yeah, I was trying to do something like this. But we're talking about many years before Netcar, because Netcar I started in 2001. So this was good 4 years before that. I finally implemented IMGUI in my Vulkan engine. Is it in Rust or in C++? What are you using again, Tirak or C? Yeah, Arnaud versus Villeneuve. So lots of legendary stuff happening in that year. C++. Yeah, and C++ is obviously is a little bit easier, but it's still a fantastic victory, and it's such a good system. I am going so useful. Yeah, that's correct. It was like V12s against the first turbos. And I remember the Renault. I remember because, you know, I was watching. I was a kid, but I remember already. Formula 1 was a big thing in my house. So I remember my family, my father, my grandfather. Someday was like Formula 1, and those years, the Renault. If the Renault didn't break, it was pretty much unbeatable. But it was breaking up all the time. You know, the turbo engine, like... I decided to use a language I know when I'm learning Vulkan. Very, very sane decision. Yeah, very, very sane decision. John Player Special, yeah. The Lotus, yeah. Lots of good stuff. Don't remember who was driving the Lotus. Don't remember. But there was basically almost no physics. I had almost no idea. But it was the time that I actually bought the Millikan. The Millikan is this kind of a Bible for race car dynamics, vehicle dynamics. And then at the time when I bought it, it was completely like I had absolutely no idea what 90% of the book was talking about. My background is really, I was not a very good student. I obviously I can code, so it also means that I can be pretty good in math, but I didn't love school when I was a kid. So in order to learn to do physics, I had a lot to catch up, and still now, if the formula gets, especially if it's not code, if it is a pure math book and the math starts to go too much into things like abstract stuff, integrals or stuff like that, I still struggle a lot, because sadly my high school, I never been to university, so, and my high school years, I wasn't around in the class very often, let's put it this way. So I had a lot of catching up to do. So I bought this book, and I realized I bought this book, and I remember I went for an interview in Milestone, and I didn't get a job in Milestone. The interview in Milestone was brutal. I remember I had an interview with Ubisoft that went really well. At a certain point, I was in touch with Microprose in England, and it looked like it was going to go well. And even with the image space game in America, which are the guys that do R Factor. So I felt very confident when I went to the interview with Milestone that I was like, I'm gonna get this job 100%. And the interview was brutal, absolutely brutal. Went terrible. It really, it was quite humiliating. It was quite a humiliating experience. So, but that was really the beginning of it all. It was like, it was that interview that gave me that kind of attitude. In Napoli, where I was born, we call it the cazzimma. It's like that will to fight in a dirty way if necessary. To go, I'm gonna fuck this guy. I'm gonna do a racing game that is better than their game. But it took me a long time. It took me a long time. So for many years, I just gave up trying to do a racing simulator, and I was doing other kind of games, other kind of prototypes. But I had that book, that Millikan, and I kept reading it every day. It was my bedside reading. And at a certain point, after some years, in 2001, I was like, I think I can do it now. I think I understand enough about car dynamics that I can give it another try. And that's how Netcar started. Did you read all the Millikan? Yeah, pretty much. I mean, obviously there are things that are more useful to do a simulator than other. At the end of the day, the way you go to do a simulator is kind of the opposite way, because the Millikan is more a book that is about analyzing the behavior rather than create the behavior, right? So you use it more like a validation, but there are a lot of essential concepts in that book. But after that, there are other books. There is a book by a guy called Giancarlo Genta that was very important for me for Netcar. Genta. Vehicle book, something like that. Motor vehicle dynamics. Here you go. Modeling and simulation. So this one was close. Yeah, exactly this one. So this one was kind of more useful. Definitely more useful to. Whoa, that's an expensive book. Yeah, and quite big as well. Maybe you should create something like Netcar Remastered. Many companies doing this. Yeah, I mean, Microprose. I was watching, they're doing Gunship. Microprose is doing, I don't know if you guys remember, but Microprose for me was like, the game company. Microprose. So they restarted Gunship. There you go. Was it 1 day ago? And they were doing all sorts of flight simulation. So didn't look like this, obviously. So it's kind of the remake that they're doing. Super cool. And there was a they did like the F-19 stealth fighter. This game, man, this game. It came with a manual. Oh my god, I still remember the box. This thing was insane. Came with a box and a fantastic manual. And it looked like this. Oh my gosh. It took ages to load. My god, I still remember, like, you know, you had like different radar systems. So you had the Doppler radar, and if it was a Doppler radar, you had to kind of go around it. And there was the other kind of radar. Oh my gosh. What is this? The Battlestar Galactica music. This thing was amazing. This thing was amazing. Now these are really the thing that made me want to do this job. And obviously Microprose was the Formula One Geoff Grammond stuff, no? I think I've been online for 3 hours 35. I think it's time to act like we have a life. What do you think, wife? Hmm? Yeah? We should watch a movie or something. It's Saturday after all. Right. Okay. So, no, hold on. I was loading the girl in the menu. So in the menu now, I should have orange hair. Run tennis. There you go. Okay. You know what? Whoa. If I could have put like the alpha channel, the alpha value, and I could make her with no hair. Will look more like me. Poor girl. Poor girl. I think it's not gonna work for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's not transparent, so it's not gonna work. But, you know, maybe something that we could it is for the modern audience. There you go. It should be my character like this. What the hell is going on here? Is it the shadow of the... This is the shadow of the hair? No idea what this stuff is. You have an idea what this could be? I have no idea. Nope. Nope. Well, obviously it's not the name. Obviously it's not the name. Every day I've read something stupid in there. When I'm working with Vulkan linked lists in Rust is very... Yeah, no, don't do that. Is the... You mean the... When you say the linked list, is the thing to enable the exception or stuff like that? I don't even remember how it looks like. Yeah. But you really only have to do it... let me see. Let me see when I'm using it. This is... Luckily, this is the part of the code that I don't really touch often. I mean, it's not bad because you do this push next. It's really not bad because it does it does it automatically. C++ is much worse, I think. Because I think that push next does is, yeah, appends it at the end of the queue, which is interesting. How do you read them back? Why would you really don't need to read them back though? I think it's literally the only place that I'm using this stuff. Same thing here. Like if you use get physical device feature, I don't. I call it here, and I'm just checking there is a discrete GPU. I don't really look at anything. Props, device name. Yeah, I don't do other stuff. Let me get a more decent hair color and then we go. So let's try in the editor what hair color I want to have. I mean, it's kind of cool that I have blondie here. Let's keep blondie for a while. No, let's do what color? What hair color? Pink. Shit. So 0906 700. Six 738. Oh, look at this. At least it's not blue. You like this pink hair? More lavender. Is it lavender or pink? I can never. That's lavender. All right, that's cool. It works. See? On the other side, is you like after spending 3 months in the sun. Super dark. All right, cool. Let's get the shot for the thumbnail. Moves so fast. That's really dark. When it goes in the sun, like you can really see that it's very dark. All right, that's cool. The target for next week, it's depending what I have. If I have something new to put in the graphics, we will see. But what I would really like to do for next week is to get into a situation where we have somebody playing on the other court. I would really like to get this system up where we're playing here and there will be another match going on here. That would be really cool. But obviously my to-do list is quite big. So we did this today, which is cool. We didn't touch at all on this tie breaks and set of 4 games, but this is really easy, so it should be really straightforward. Courtside change. Should I try to do this? I'm pretty tired. UI for shot quality feedback. This is basically putting a number when you hit the ball. That is going to tell you how well you did. Training we're still doing. AI tactics. Yeah, it's going to come. Volley system. Yeah. Save collision shape for jiggle bones. Yeah. As on this is not really that important. Right. Thanks a lot, guys. No idea if I'm gonna be online tomorrow. It's very possible, but we will see. Have a great Saturday. Enjoy life, and see you next time. Ciao, 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 ciao.